Hello, I'm Skip Sharp, W9REL, and Assistant Section Emergency Coordinator for Training. Welcome to Training Bulletin number 8, Near Vertical Incident Skywave, also known as NVIS or NVIS for short. I want to talk with you about NVIS because of its ability to concentrate signals within a few hundred miles of the transmitting station, which is a good thing when we want to communicate reliably around the state. Near vertical incident skywave is a communications method. For NVIS, stations usually use horizontal antennas much closer to the ground than antennas for DX. For that matter, for NVIS to work its best, both the transmitting and the receiving stations should use NVIS antennas. NVIS doesn't require any special hardware, radios, or other equipment. NVIS signals have very high takeoff angles, sending signals nearly straight up, causing them to reflect off the ionosphere and come nearly straight back down again, eliminating the skip zone, which is common with DX. That makes NVIS a better choice for close-in communications. NVIS isn't a new idea, though. It was pioneered by the British and the American military back in the 1940s during World War II. The thing about NVIS is that it works best on lower frequencies. For amateur radio, that means the 40, 60, and 75 meter bands will work best. Without getting too scientific about it, NVIS is dependent upon something known as the maximum usable frequency, or MUF.
In radio transmission, maximum usable frequency (MUF) is the highest radio frequency that can be used for transmission between 2 points via reflection from the ionosphere, skywave or skip, propagation at a specified time, independent of transmitter power. This index is especially useful in regard to shortwave transmissions. In shortwave radio communication, a major mode of long-distance propagation is for the radio waves to reflect off the ionized layers of the atmosphere and return diagonally back to Earth. In this way, radio waves can travel beyond the horizon, around the curve of the Earth. However, the refractive index of the ionosphere decreases with increasing frequency, so there is an upper limit to the frequency which can be used. Above this frequency, the radio waves are not reflected by the ionosphere, but are transmitted through it into space. The ionization of the atmosphere varies with time of day and season as well as with solar conditions, so the upper frequency limit for skywave communication varies on an hourly basis. On a given day, communications may or may not succeed at the MUF. Commonly, the optimal operating frequency for a given path is estimated at 80 to 90% of the MUF.
Well, I guess that explanation was a little weedy, but nonetheless it's good to have. Okay, back to 75 meters being better for NVIS at night and 40 and 60 meters being better during the day. Why exactly is that? That's because the MUF is lower at night. The ionosphere, that part of the Earth's atmosphere residing roughly between 30 and 400 miles above Earth, is made up of several layers named D, E, and F. These layers are different between daylight hours and nighttime. At night, with the sun over the horizon, the D layer dissipates, the E layer fades dramatically, and the F1 and F2 layers combine into a single F region. Also, the MUF becomes lower. During daylight, on the other hand, the sun's rays really excite the ionosphere, causing the F region to split into the F1 and F2 layers, and the demon D layer and his evil cousin, the E layer, to appear, and the MUF becomes higher. I call the D layer the demon D layer and the E layer his evil cousin because they tend to absorb rather than reflect radio signals, especially at frequencies below 3 megahertz. Higher frequency signals between 3 and 10 megahertz pass through the D and E layers and strike the F layers and are refracted back to Earth. Frequencies above, say, 10 megahertz zip right through the F region and are
because you know I'm all about that bass, about that bass.
Well, with all due respect, in this case it's all about the angle, the takeoff angle of signals from transmitting stations to be exact. The steeper the takeoff angle, the closer the refracted signals return to Earth, and boom, you have NVIS. Let's take a look at a DX signal. They have lower takeoff angles of radiation, typical of vertical antennas, and horizontal antennas elevated a quarter wavelength or more above the ground. This is good if you want to talk to Europe or Asia or other exotic faraway places, but not so good for close-in communications. Well, yes, there is some close-in signal thanks to ground wave, but all this area out here between ground wave coverage and where signals reflected back to Earth from the ionosphere, there's nothing. In other words, ain't nobody gonna hear you. With NVIS, the takeoff angle is much higher, typical of an antenna located well below a quarter wavelength above the ground. Not only is there direct radiation from the antenna, but the ground acts as a reflector. In fact, some NVIS operators advocate putting one or more wires on the ground under the dipole, which acts as a driven element to enhance reflection. And the result of this higher angle of radiation, look ma, there's no skip zone. The classic NVIS antenna is horizontal, like this dipole or this N-fed long wire, both elevated less than a quarter wavelength above the ground. And here's a dipole, again, located close to the ground with several wires located below the dipole, which is the radiating element in this case. However, not all NVIS antennas have to be horizontal. This multiband sloper will work well, as will this military-style antenna modeled after the Army's AS2259GR antenna. If you decide to build an antenna for NVIS, there are several sources of information and plans on the internet. DX Engineering has this excellent document on their website. And Patrick Lambert also has a lot of information on his website. His is geared more to horizontal antennas. And with a little imagination, there's no telling what will work on NVIS. And here's VA3OSO using a chain link fence.
I'm here using this fence, and it seems to be receiving all right. I haven't tried to contact yet, but we'll see if anyone can hear me.
CQ CQ NVIS Ontario. Here is Victor Alpha 2, Golf November, calling CQ and listening.
Victor Alpha 3, Oscar Sierra Oscar.
Victor Alpha 3, Oscar Sierra Oscar. Nice signal. And the name here is Dave, Delta Alpha Victor Echo. And we'll give you a signal report on the next transmission. So back to you, VA.
So in summary then, NVIS is a method to provide close-in to medium-range communications without a skip zone. NVIS accomplishes this by using very high angles of radiation from the transmitting antenna. NVIS requires no special transmitting or receiving equipment or antennas. NVIS works best when both the transmitting and receiving station have NVIS antennas. And NVIS works best when antennas are elevated less than a quarter wavelength above the ground. In short, NVIS is an excellent method to use for statewide or disaster communications. I hope you enjoyed this training bulletin and got some useful information from it. If you have questions, feel free to email me at my call sign, W9REL@ARRL.net. Enjoy amateur radio. It's a fantastic hobby. 7-3 from W9REL.